Welcome everybody. Today's video is for you if you are feeling stuck and you just feel like you can't move forward, but you want to, and you want to as fast as possible. Because have you felt that? Have you felt stuck in that endless loop, spinning your wheels, but you're just not going anywhere? Like maybe you're a parent, you're just juggling those endless responsibilities, you're constantly exhausted, and you're wondering if you're ever going to feel like more than a caretaker ever again. I've been there, I understand. Or maybe you're an entrepreneur who started, a business with this passion and vision, but now you're buried in those day-to-day operations and you feel disconnected from the purpose that once drove you. Or maybe you could be like me where, at one time I was an employee. So maybe you're an employee, just staring at your cubicle, just sitting there, staring at the walls, feeling like just another replaceable part of that massive corporate machine that's around you. Now, if these feel familiar to you, I want you to know something super important, that feeling of being stuck where you are, it is not a dead end. In fact, it's often a clear sign that you're about to break through, that you're on the verge of moving forward, and that you just need to get some of the right pieces in place to do that. And I want to cover those things today. Now, my name is Jake Talbert. I'm the founder and I'm the author of this book called The GIVER Method. It's an Amazon bestseller. It's designed to help people transform their lives, discover their gifts and superpowers, live a more fulfilled life, and have deeper, more fulfilling connections with everyone around them, which is applicable to parents, to entrepreneurs, to the employee, any of you who are trying to do more and be more. So I'll put a link to this Amazon bestseller, to the book, The GIVER Method, down in the description. You can go to Amazon and get it. Best $10 you can invest in yourself for this year. Now, if you're not ready to do that, I'll also include a link to my free resource called The Giver's Roadmap that will help kind of get you started with some of the initial steps as a part of that. Now, as we're going through today, we're going to talk about how to get unstuck when you're feeling like you're just running in circles. Because let's be honest, when you are stressed and overwhelmed and burnt out, hope alone isn't enough. You need these practical strategies to break you free from cycles and to start building more momentum. I know this territory so incredibly well. I have been in that sea of cubicles feeling like my life is just passing by me. I've experienced that crushing weight of the responsibility, wondering if I'm failing as a father and a husband and a provider. And I've felt the emptiness that comes when you lose connection with what your purpose is. But I've also discovered that these moments of feeling that stuck are often just before some of the greatest breakthroughs I've ever had. The frustration you're feeling, it's a sign that you're aware something needs to change and it needs to shift. And that awareness is the first step towards your transformation. So I'm going to walk you through this momentum plan, these different strategies that are going to help you to break this cycle of overthinking and inaction. Whether, like I said, if you're a parent overwhelmed or an entrepreneur who's lost that spark, or maybe you're working for a company and you just feel tapped out, these are going to be the principles that help you to get unstuck and move forward again. Now, before we dive into them, if this is such valuable content, it'd be the same thing I'd be giving to you if you were here in my office with me. I was working with you one-on-one, and that's how all of the content is that I provide. So please, if you're new, hit subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. I don't want you to miss out on any of the future videos about unlocking potential and creating more meaningful impact in your world. You can also find us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of those places, or at thegivermethod.com. I'll include all of those links along with the link to the book and to the free resource down in the description so you can get access to them. Now, let's dive in and let's get started. The first principle or thing as it pertains to getting that momentum forward is to recognize that you are stuck in a loop. Getting unstuck, understanding what's really happening around you. That feeling of running in circles isn't random. It's actually a neurological pattern that you have that your brain has settled into. Neuroscientists, I believe they refer to it as there's a preservation loop, which is that repetitive thought pattern that fails to produce new insights or action. And when we feel stuck, our brain enters that sort of state where our blood flow actually shifts away from the parts of the brain. I believe it's the prefrontal cortex, responsible for creative thinking and decision making, and more towards the primitive regions of survival. Now, this physically reduces our ability to make up new solutions and create new possibilities. The longer it continues, the more our brain actually gets wired to notice only evidence that confirms I'm stuck, while filtering out potential opportunities. As a parent, that might be feeling like you are trapped in, reactive patterns for your kids, or seeing only overwhelm, responsibilities of missing moments of connection with others. For that entrepreneur, it could be, that you fixate on problems and you're losing sight of that original vision. And as an employee, it could be focusing on the constraints of your job rather than potential paths forward. So start by just acknowledging it. Like, take this second right now and say, all right, I get it. I'm stuck. I'm here and I'm ready to move forward. It's not about beating yourself up in any way. It's just recognizing a pattern that your brain has fallen into. Some of the best people I know have fallen into these same places, and they've found the ways to dig themselves out of it. So take that step back and observe, what are your thought patterns? Notice when you're telling yourself the same stories over and over again about why change isn't possible. This is just a simple, here's a simple exercise to try. Most people who feel stuck, they aren't actually stuck. They just believe in that same story. Your mind loves that certainty. So when you feel lost, or your brain starts to label it as like, I'm stuck, or I don't know what to do, I have no control over this, none of those are actual facts. They're just thoughts, and thoughts can be changed. So for the next 3 days, carry around maybe a small notebook or use your notes app on your phone. And each time you catch yourself thinking something like, I'm stuck, I can't change this, or something along those lines, write it down and note the situation, the time of day, what triggered that thought. And after maybe 3 days, review those notes, and you're going to start to see patterns of specific triggers of times when you felt you were stuck in this loop. And then the next thing is to then challenge it. For each thought you've identified, start to reframe how it is. Instead of saying I'm stuck, you could think things like, well, gosh, I'm interested in the process of figuring out. I don't know the answer yet, but I'm starting to take action. Or I've broken through before, I can do it again. Your thoughts, if you start to have thoughts of even I'll never advance in this company, gosh, maybe I haven't explored all growth paths that are here yet. It's not about positive thinking. It's about breaking out of the single track perspective that your brain starts to fall into, and understanding that neurological basis of feeling stuck is there. It's important to see that so you can shift it when you're in certain situations. When you feel like your permanent reality is actually just your brain in a temporary pattern. And this knowledge gives you the power to recognize it, to catch it in that loop, and start to pivot it away from that. And when you recognize you're stuck in that sort of a pattern, rather than being in that permanent state, create the mental space needed for possibilities to emerge. This often, the first crack in the wall of stuckness, the first thing that's going to start breaking through. And sometimes that's all you need to start breaking through and really start running quickly, even before we get into these next items. And that's going to take us to our second principle, which is shifting out of this overthinking into a different approach of micro actions. Because one of the biggest reasons we feel stuck is because we get trapped in that endless thinking, without taking any action. Just simply putting, we're overthinking it, right? Your brain is running that endless loop of questions of what if I make the wrong choice? Or what if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What will people think? What if I start and I can't get through all of it? We analyze and plan and prepare and wait for perfect moments or perfect plans before we make any moves. And that's a huge problem. Thinking isn't action in any way. And the longer you hesitate, the harder it gets to move. Now, research out there is going to show you that inaction strengthens the neural pathways that are associated with fear and self-doubt, making it even harder to break free or move forward. But there's the truth here, and it's that clarity comes from action, not from thought. Your brain is designed to protect you from risk and uncertainty that could be out there. So when you're facing these big challenges or chasing it, it responds by generating this endless what ifs or worst case scenarios. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that could show up for parents who are juggling work and family, worrying about if they're, doing enough, and entrepreneurs and trying to find the right perfect plan. I see that too many times with the businesses that I work with. That's the problem. The more that you think without acting, the more paralyzed you become. Your brain creates these increasingly complex scenarios and obstacles, making action feel even more impossible. It's like quicksand. The more you struggle mentally, the deeper you're going to sink. And so the one way to move past that sort of overthinking is through what I call micro actions. And I've done a lot of videos on this recently. These are the tiny actions that create momentum and provide real world feedback that, no amount of thinking will ever generate. So here's what you want to do to really start to implement this. First, think of an area where you're feeling stuck, and then start to determine the absolute smallest action that you could take towards improvement. I'm talking ridiculously small, something that might take 2 minutes or 5 minutes or less. If it takes 2 minutes or less to do, just do it now. Just go do it. count down from 5 and get started. Like, if it's bigger, break it down to its smallest possible action and then go and do that. Parents, it might be, that you need to set a timer. I need to spend 5 minutes of undistracted time with one of my children. Or if you're feeling overwhelmed as a parent, like instead of trying to tackle everything at once, set a timer for 2 minutes and declutter just one small space. Pick up the toy as you walk by. For entrepreneurs, it could be just a paragraph, writing out a paragraph of why you started doing this in the first place. And instead of stressing over business growth, send maybe one outreach email to somebody. If you're that employee feeling stuck, perhaps it's updating a single line on your resume, or reaching out to a person in your network, or applying for one job, reading one article, or just taking one tiny step forward. That momentum, you take that action, even if it's tiny, you shift from hesitation into that momentum. Like, small wins stack up, and before you know it, you're moving again. You're starting forward. The key is to make this action so small that your brain doesn't have time to overthink it or create resistance. Mel Robbins teaches her 5-second rule. You count down from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch, go. Just count down and go. It's one of the best things I ever implemented in my life. The key is to make the action so small that your brain just doesn't think about it. Don't worry about whether this tiny step will solve stuckness. That's not the point. The point is to shift from thinking into that doing, and from stagnation to some sort of motion. Because micro actions, they're just so powerful. They bypass all of your brain's fear response and create evidence of what's possible, which creates more momentum and resilience for you. Each small step proves to your brain that you can make progress, and you start to feel more ready and more certain. Like, more importantly, like, it generates the real world feedback that no amount of thinking will ever provide you. Rather than imagining, what if I tried something new? Like, no, you're trying something new, and that concrete information is more valuable to you as you take your next steps forward. Those small actions accumulate and create that foundation for larger change. Do not underestimate the power of the tiniest steps. They often break you free from feeling stuck. Now, the third principle is about, like, you have to reclaim the energy that you have. Like, you're feeling stuck, and it's often, not a lack of time that's actually the issue. It's this lack of energy towards things. We all have the same 24-hour day, but how much mental or emotional or physical energy do we use? How much is available or varies throughout the day is dramatically different for each of us. When you're a parent, an entrepreneur, or a busy professional, energy is constantly being drained by these competing demands. And the problem is that we often misdiagnose our stuckness with a lack of willpower or motivation, when really it's just an energy crisis. Like, we try to push through with more effort, which is only depleting you completely further than where you're at right this moment. Like, we end up in that cycle where we have just enough energy to maintain our current situation, but not enough to create any sort of a change. Like, think about it. Like, as a parent, you're constantly giving that energy towards your family, and you don't replenish your own. Or you're in your business, you might be pouring everything into it, and you just don't have boundaries. You're hustling to get things done. Like, you're the employee and depleting energy on the tasks that just don't align with your strengths or your values. So the first thing to do is you do these energy audits for yourself. For 1 week, just go track the activities you do and notice which things drain your energy, which ones restore it, and be very specific. Don't just track work versus leisure, but like actual tasks within each category. You might discover that certain meetings deplete you while problem solving energizes you, or that, scrolling social media leaves you drained while reading a book rejuvenates you. The goal is to identify what are your own personal energy patterns, and then look for the energy leaking that could be happening with activities that consume energy without providing any value. These might be excessive time on social media, maybe unnecessary meetings, saying yes to commitments that don't align with what your priorities are, or prolonged worrying about things that you can't even control. Now, this next part's the really crucial part. You have to start to restructure your day to prioritize your energy management. It means scheduling high-value activities during your natural energy peaks and protecting those times from any sort of an interruption. It means setting boundaries around energy-draining activities, whether it's limiting the types or how long that you do that. Energy is a currency. We have 3 currencies of life: time, energy, and money, and they are all as valuable as the next one. Without sufficient energy, even the best strategies are going to, with the best intentions, are going to fall flat. When you're just constantly feeling depleted, your brain reverts to the familiar patterns that require less energy, than forging new paths. And so when you reclaim that energy, now you're creating capacity for growth and change. You break free from merely surviving each day to creating space for true thriving. It's going to shift what feeling stuck into like, feeling what's possible. And when you manage your energy, it isn't selfish. It's actually truly essential. Just like if you're on a plane, you need to put on your own mask before helping others. Like, you reclaim your energy, you're going to give to, so you can give more to your family or your business or your work. New possibilities are waiting just beyond your current circumstances. We just have to have the energy to step forward and get them. Now, our fourth one is going to be to create environment shifts around you. Because have you ever noticed that some of your best ideas come like when you're in the shower or while you're driving or maybe in some other place? And that's because new environments disrupt those repetitive thought loops that you have. Your environment shapes your thoughts and behaviors far more than people realize. Like, the space that you put yourself in and you occupy, like the people you interact with, the stimuli that you expose yourself to, like, it has such a huge influence on what you think and what you believe is possible. And when you're stuck in a cycle, your environment can often reinforce that stuckness without even noticing. The same physical space or routines or even same people keep you locked in your body in that like familiar pattern. Your brain forms strong association between environments and behaviors, which is why it's so hard to think differently in the same places. Trying to think of something new, if you're a parent, you're in the kitchen where you're always interrupted. Or as an entrepreneur, you're trying to reconnect with your vision, sitting in the same desk, with the same operational things, that your fires that you're putting out all day. As an employee, you're trying to envision this new path scheduled around the cubicle walls that you're in. Like, it's not going to work. The good news is, though, that you can leverage environmental psychology to create breakthrough moments, change your environment. I do this all the time where if I'm working on something and I'm getting stuck, I'll come out of my office out here, walk around, I'll talk to other people in the office. Sometimes we go out and we take a walk around the building talking through things because it breaks up the pattern. It changes what that is. So that it's called pattern interruption. It's that deliberate change of your physical environment or daily routine. It might be as simple as, rearranging your workspace. Maybe it's just changing things around. It could be, taking a different route to work or working from a different location maybe throughout the day. Like, the goal is just to disrupt what the automatic association that your brain has formed and try creating a designed break-free space for like your physical location, you use exclusively for forward thinking. It also could be just activities you're doing. Maybe you need to go for that walk. Maybe you need to change what you're drinking. Like, don't drink coffee, drink water, or change up the flavor, grab a Gatorade. It could be like, I have here in my office, like the treadmill that I can start walking on and kind of getting blood moving as a part of that. Like, it just changes what I'm doing in that moment so that I can change where I'm at. So think about it. Like, if you're a parent, you're in that sort of a place, like maybe you need a solo coffee break outside the house. Maybe as an entrepreneur, you need to work from a new location to try getting fresh thinking. If you're, drowning in a daily routine, maybe taking meetings outside or rearranging workspace to break up the monotony. When you start to change your inputs, you change the outputs, and the new environment creates new mental patterns for you, leading to fresh solutions and momentum. Consider a day of difference where you just completely change everything about your routine for 24 hours. Now, that's a hard thing for me to say because I'm very routine oriented, but you just need to, maybe wake up different or eat different foods or take different routes, engage in different activities, create a mental reset that can dislodge stuck thinking. Social environments, they're going to matter just as much. So maybe they're the people who energize you and make time, for conversations with those people, or note the relationships that maybe are leaving you depleted or more stuck and create appropriate boundaries for those. Environment shifts, they bypass that conscious resistance for change. Even when you're intellectually committed to breaking free from stuckness, your brain subconsciously is going to work against you and look for those familiar patterns. So physical and social environment changes disrupt that for you. Now, our fifth one is you need to reconnect with your purpose. Now, this is going to be important for everybody, parents, employees, but also that entrepreneur who's feeling like they've lost that connection. But it's as important for the parents. Like, one of the most common reasons people are feeling stuck is losing connection with that deeper purpose, the why behind what we do. You get caught up in that daily grind. It's easy to forget the larger meaning that once inspired you, and that disconnection leaves you going through emotions without energy that comes from a purpose-driven activity. Parents lose sight of maybe why did they choose to even become a parent amidst all the chaos of daily responsibilities. Entrepreneurs, those administrative tasks just overwhelm you and eat you away. And we talked about employees, like the politics, the pressures of corporate life, it just disconnects you from a deeper mission. Without sort of clear connection to your purpose and your decisions, like become even harder. Your priorities start to blur and your motivation starts to wane in all sorts of ways. And you end up in that reactive cycle, responding to those immediate demands without a compass to guide your choices. And like I said, I've been there before. I've woken up in that sea of cubicles feeling that way. It makes you feel increasingly stuck because you're navigating without a destination. And so reconnect with your why, like your purpose, requires some deliberate reflection and honest questioning of yourself. So start by doing a why audit. Ask yourself, like, what first excited me about this? What benefits, who benefits from the work or the things that I'm doing? What's the one thing I could do to reconnect with my purpose? And what matters most to me in this role as a parent or an employee, a spouse, entrepreneur? Like whether, it doesn't matter which of these you are, the clarity of what success truly looks like, beyond the external markers like perfection or profit or promotion. Like even if the bigger picture feels unclear, reconnecting with your core purpose behind what you do can reignite that motivation. And then do simple purpose check-ins, at the beginning of the week. Take 5 minutes to write down like one way your actions are connected with your larger purpose. At the end of each day, maybe write a brief note of the moments where your purpose alignment was experienced, no matter how small, because its purpose is an antidote to stuckness, because it provides direction and energy. And when you are clear of what your why is, the decisions you make become simpler and priorities become clearer and obstacles are way more manageable as you shift from reactive to intentional living. Neurologically, purpose activities, like, it's going to change, brain regions and how you think about things than routine tasks do. When you connect with daily actions to meaningful purpose, like you engage more of your brain's motivational and creative centers, and that expands that natural activity, helps you break from stuck loops, that we were discussing earlier. It reconnects you with a purpose and transforms these, experiences that you have, challenges into opportunities. The same difficult conversation with a teenager, tough business decision, or workplace challenge feels different when you see it as a part of a meaningful journey rather than another burden to bear. That shift in perspective creates mental space you're needing for breakthroughs in your thinking and your actions. Now, our sixth one is that you build success momentum, because when you're feeling stuck, it's easy to focus on everything that isn't working in any way and overlooking those small wins. We talked about the small micro actions you could take. Progress you are making is so important. The negative focus creates this mental environment where breakthroughs seem impossible. The brain begins to filter out evidence from your capabilities and zero in on limitations that you may have. And that pattern is particularly dangerous because your brain has confirmation bias. It looks for evidence that confirms its beliefs. So if you believe you're stuck, your brain will diligently look for evidence to support that belief, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, you might say. Now, the way you want to break this cycle is you look for success momentum, where you're deliberately tracking and celebrating any sort of progress you have, no matter how small it is. And it's not a false positive in any way. It's about creating an accurate picture of your growth that includes both challenges and victories. So what's your success inventory? Take just a few minutes and list out, a bunch of, maybe take 15 minutes and put down 20 small activities you've achieved in the last month. No matter how minor it may be, a moment with, I practiced patience with my child, a client who expressed appreciation, a task I completed despite obstacles that were in my way. The key is quantity, not size. You're looking for evidence of progress is possible. And then establish, some wins, some daily win tracking as a habit. Like each evening, what are the specific, maybe 3 wins from your day, no matter how small? And you're training your brain to notice progress rather than forcing it to focus on the problems. The maximum, to really maximize the impact here, share those wins with someone, with your spouse, your partner, a friend, a colleague, somebody. Create those momentum markers visible, where you can put things around that tell you, we did this, I accomplished that. Next thing you can do is implement that into your, think about maybe even doing a morning routine, a momentum morning routine, where you start your day determining the energy you want to carry into it. Most people wake up, immediately scroll their phones, check emails, news, social media. It puts them into this reactive state instead of starting their day with this momentum formula. I'm going to move. I'm going to go for a short walk. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to work on mindset. So journal. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to visualize my goals. And then momentum, do one small action that pushes your life forward. So those 3 M's move around, change your mindset, get momentum. Like when you start your day with these intentions instead of reaction, you set the tone for momentum in your life moving forward. Finally, like practice that right-sized goals. Once again, breaking them into smaller. That's where those micro actions come into play. Make it the small goal. Like don't worry about transforming your relationship with your child, like revolutionizing your business model. It's like, no, I'm just going to focus in on the small thing, because success momentum, like your brain responds to that evidence. We talked about that, like not just the intentions. When you consciously notice and acknowledge your progress, you create the proof that change is possible. That evidence like changes neurologically how your brain thinks about it. Celebrating those small wins releases dopamine into your system, which not only feels good, but also motivates you to take further action. So instead of seeing yourself as someone who's stuck, you begin to recognize yourself as someone who is making progress despite challenges. And that shift in identity is often a turning point between feeling trapped and feeling capable of breakthrough. And then the seventh principle, the last one we're going to talk about, is about creating an intentional support system where you're trying to break free from stuckness alone. I mean, that's like trying to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. Like physically, it's impossible. Yet many people, especially those of us who want to make greater impact, you could be a high achiever or someone who's just wanting to make greater impact, like attempt to overcome all the challenges they have in isolation. I'm guilty of this myself, totally guilty of this. Like we believe asking for help somehow shows weakness, or like we don't want to burden others with our struggles. And this sort of isolation makes breakthrough much harder to achieve. And when you're stuck in your own perspective, you can't see alternative paths that might be obvious to somebody else. Without that external input, you continue this cycle of the same, maybe limited options, and reinforcing a sense of being trapped. Parents, it happens all the time. Isolation from comparing yourself to maybe the perfect families that you see on social media, or making you reluctant to share what your struggles are. As running a business, you feel like you need to project confidence, hide the doubts from others, people around you, other businesses or advisors. Employees feel fear appearing maybe incompetent in their role, even though they're stuck where they are. And so breaking free from that requires intentionally creating support systems to provide you perspective and accountability and really encouragement. We all need that. Like it's not about random venting or seeming sympathy, but strategic involvement from others helping you to break through your journey. So like start by, who's your breakthrough team? You need to figure out who's going to be on your quote unquote like breakthrough team. Like that, find 2 to 3 people. Look for someone who can provide you honest feedback, consistent encouragement, like someone who's navigated similar challenges as you successfully and moved past it. And then create those perspective sessions with these people. Like these aren't casual conversations. Like you're actually looking for structured discussions where you're talking about where you're stuck and what you're trying to change, and you come prepared with specific questions and being open to the feedback, even if it challenges your own assumptions. Maybe you need to join a group of some kind, a community, a mastermind to help you in working through that. Like this might be formal masterminding, it might be parenting support groups, it might even be book clubs focused on personal development. The key is just regular connection, because those support systems that you can put into place provide external perspective when you're caught in those internal loops. They're going to see options and possibilities that maybe are invisible to you. Plus, they can play a vital role of accountability in breaking you through that stuckness. When you share your intentions with someone else, you're significantly more likely to follow through with them when your motivation starts to fluctuate. Like intentional support combats isolation that accompanies that feeling stuckness. The breakthrough you're seeking likely lies just beyond your current perspective, and the right support system can help you to see that and break through. So as we start to wrap up today, I want you to remember that feeling stuck isn't a permanent condition. It's often a precursor to your next breakthrough. That frustration that you're feeling is actually an awareness that something needs to change, and that awareness is the first step towards transitioning towards that. Like 7 principles, these things we talked about, like can provide you a pathway out of that circular pattern into a path of forward momentum. Their strategies, like they work, whether you're a parent that's overwhelmed with all those responsibilities, or the entrepreneur feeling lost and out of touch with your passion, or I'm just an employee feeling trapped in that corporate machine. Doesn't matter. The key is taking your first small step, even when you don't feel ready. Remember, breakthroughs rarely happen in these grand, dramatic moments. Like they come through the constant intentional actions that gradually build your momentum. Every micro step you take creates more evidence that change is possible for you. And that evidence is where you transform out of feeling stuck to feeling capable. Now, if there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, like, you are closer to that breakthrough than you think. The very fact that you're like seeking solutions, that you watch this video, shows you're already in motion. Now it's about channeling that awareness into strategic action. And I'd love to hear which of these principles resonate with you the most. So you could either comment on the video or email me, info@thegivermethod.com. Send me an email. I'd love to hear, like, hey, I had some breakthroughs I'd love to take away from this. Like, drop a comment like below, share insights, maybe ask a question. Like, if you found this helpful, maybe just make sure you hit like, subscribe to the video, share it with someone else that may need help with unlocking their potential and creating meaningful impact. I want to thank you for joining me today. Remember, we talk a lot about gifts and superpowers. The world needs them, and if you're stuck, you're going to keep them hidden. You can get the book, The Giver Method, and The Giver Method is going to help you a ton when it comes to that. Like I said, the link is going to be in the description to get you access to that book, or to the Giver Roadmap, the free resource, as well as all the places you can find us. Until next time, I'm Jake Talbert. This has been The Giver Method, and I invite you to just keep growing, keep giving, and know that you have the ability to push forward and live a more fulfilled life. And it starts with just one simple step forward that you can take today. With that, have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you in our next video.